to learn the value of money, just start talking to them. And once if they knew, oh, okay, well, it costs, $20 for this and $40 for that and $100 for this. Now they're starting to form, like, they can start to understand, like, that helmet's really expensive because I could get one for $20. And it can just be that easy. It doesn't have to be a big lesson. This is how much things cost, and just start asking them. And then same with that awesome stuff. If they understand that concept of, like, what brings them the most joy, if they want something, just ask them, is it your awesome stuff?
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of It's Never About Money. Today we have a very special guest joining us from Canada, David Delisle. David is an Amazon best-selling author, entrepreneur, real estate investor, and speaker. His innovative approach to teaching financial literacy through his graphic novel, The Golden Quest, which you can see here, has made learning about money engaging and accessible for all ages. David's work emphasizes the concept of the awesome stuff, which we'll get into in this episode, encouraging people to focus on what truly brings them joy and fulfillment rather than endlessly chasing more money, which is very much a theme of the It's Never About Money podcast. His insights have been featured on TEDx, NBC, Fox News, and Forbes. So we're in very good hands. Welcome, David.
Oh, I'm so excited. This will be a lot of fun.
It will be. So, David, can you share a little bit about your background and really, at the end of the day, what inspired you to do what you specifically do?
The path is a little bit of a longer journey. I always loved, finance and money, and I was reading finance books when I was like 11. So I've always loved this stuff. But I've realized, like, a lot of it is because I watched my dad do a job he hated, spend money all the time and have nothing saved, and then need to work harder and longer to sort of maintain that lifestyle. And as a young boy growing up, he was never around. So I grew up with him absent for months at a time. He was a commercial diver, so he would be away for months at a time.
Yep.
And so I think that's sort of what really initially inspired me of just, there must be another way. And then once I realized that, like, money can earn money, like, you could put money in a bank account and earn interest, I felt like it was mind blowing. And so I got fascinated with money at a pretty early age and started investing at that same time, and then started investing in real estate in my early 20s. But it wasn't until I had my own kids, who are now 12 and 15, that I wanted to start really teaching some of the things I'd learned. And I didn't realize at the time how different a lot of the ways I think about money really are, and how so much of it really is that mindset and that relationship to money. And so that's what inspired me to write this book, make it fun for kids, because not everyone likes reading finance books at 11. And no, I know that. It's rare for me to find anyone who will.
I think adults feel the same, David. I feel adults.
Yeah, I know.
Do you reflect on what specifically actually made you said you think about money differently? And do you have a guess as to why that might be? Because I feel I am the same, and I've got reasons for that. I just wondered what your reasons are.
Well, it's funny because even as a kid, everyone thought that I just always thought about money and always wanted money and was, greedy, and it was all about money. And it's so funny because it never was for me. Like I said, I saw my dad doing something he hated. And for me, money always seemed like a means to freedom, not to never work, not to buy all these luxuries, but to have the freedom to do the things you love and do the work you love. And so for me, money's always been this tool. So I've never thought about the things I could buy. I've thought about the freedom I can have. And I don't think as a young kid, I could have said it as clearly. I didn't realize that was really how I viewed money. But definitely as I've gotten older and looked around at, my peers and myself, and even the lessons I want to instill in my kids, it's all around really that relationship and think about money differently. A lot of people are just wanting, like, how do I get more money? And that's the key question. And that's why for me, it's like the first lesson really is around your relationship to it. Why do you want the money in the first place? What is your awesome stuff? And trying to just change, like you said, in the title of your podcast, it's never about money. And that's so key. We think it is. And then one day we realize it isn't. And so that's what I'm hoping to do is just show people that maybe a little earlier than they would have learned otherwise, it's never about the money.
It feels like culturally, as societally, from a societal perspective, we kind of are we are kind of conditioned to think that more money is effectively better, and it almost seems like it's at all costs. Do you have any sort of views on the sort of culture and society kind of making its way through to not only the adults but also our, kids?
Yeah, well, it's so much of what we see. Like if you think of marketing itself, marketing's job is to make you want to buy stuff. And marketers are smart and they're good at what they do. And so we're told, buy more, you'll be happier. And we're sold it over and over and over again. And we think it's true because it's always this elusive more. You never quite get there. It doesn't matter if you've got, the beautiful home, next you want to buy the boat. And then if you've got the boat, there's bigger boats. And then you get the vacation homes. Like it's always this elusive more. Like somebody else out there has more than you and they're happier because of it. And really that's why I love this stuff so much, is because we've got so much sort of shame and judgment and chasing. And I'm just trying to show people, like, I'm not against the boat. I'm not against the more, but just really realizing, like, what is it for you? Because it's going to be different for everybody. And for most of us, what makes us happy isn't those things.
And so what role does financial literacy have to play? Because I know that you're a big advocate, obviously, for financial literacy, but not in the way that I think people think about financial literacy. They're often thinking about, explaining concepts that are related to an ability, for instance, to pick stocks or to, understand credit cards. And I suppose that's a very important part of financial literacy. But I think often the outcome or the end of financial literacy is accumulation, not necessarily what probably you're going to explain to us now.
For sure. Well, and that's the thing. If what I was talking about was the same as everybody else, I've got other things I'd rather be doing. Yeah. But because I'm doing it.
Yeah. Completely. Yeah.
But the thing is what I'm trying to sort of, this message that I'm trying to spread is a little bit different, because financial literacy, that's exactly it. A lot of us think it's stocks and buying and macroeconomics. And like I said, I was reading finance books at 11, super nerdy. I love that stuff. I can dive right into it. And it was so tempting for me to want to talk about that with my boys. Like, let's talk about stock markets and stocks and how we can, read these finance books and watch charts. But the thing is looking at what I've done over the last, 30, 40 years of investing, so much of it has nothing to do with that. And we live in a different age now where we can automate things. Our access to the stock market is so much easier. We have apps that can do all of these things for us. It wasn't that way when I was younger. And so that isn't really financial literacy. That's what people think it is. And that's what we want to teach.
Yep.
But it isn't. It's understanding the value of money. It's understanding compound growth, the time value that investments can have, and the impact that they can have on your money, and your relationship to how you spend it and chasing it. Like it's so much of that. I'm going to throw out a really good example of this.
Please.
Almost everyone I talk to, any parent, one of the first things they say, like, one, they love the idea. They're like, I need my kids to learn about money. They are terrible with money. Please talk to them and help them save. And that's what almost every parent says. Help my kids save. But in how we teach our kids to save, so they want me to convince their kids, put their money in a piggy bank and put it away, which is great. But it's to save for something. What are you saving for? What are you going to buy? And it's not saving, it's delayed gratification, which is a lesson in itself, but we're not actually teaching saving. We're teaching consumerism and don't even realize it. The difference between kids that save and kids that don't, at the end of the day, is zero savings in most cases. It's just bigger, more expensive things that the kids that, so-called savers save, that they're buying. So we really need to change the way we talk about this, because even in the lesson of saving, for most of us, we're teaching consumerism. Most people, adults included, don't realize savings aren't supposed to be touched. Like if
I
you're
love-
saving, yeah.
I love this idea. I don't love this idea, but I love this idea that we're teaching consumerism. I've never really thought about it in that way, but we probably inherently are. Again, probably from a societal perspective. So, what is the antidote to the chaos? What is the way in which we can reinstate some sort of equilibrium so that when young people are actually making choices, they can actually take stock and go, is this the right option or is that the right option? You know, how can we be a more discerning consumer rather than just a voracious one, which is what we all seem to be?
So the first lesson that I teach in my book, and I talk to parents and kids and adults about, that should be the most important lesson, isn't how to have more. It's why do you want more in the first place? It's this idea around what I call is like the awesome stuff and just money mindfulness. So pausing, so reflecting, is this my awesome stuff? Before you buy something, asking, is this my awesome stuff? And whether it is or isn't, doesn't matter. It's not it's not if it's your awesome stuff, it's you pausing and reflecting. That will start to change everything. Because the more you start to do these things, I like to say, like, the more you focus on what brings you joy, the more you realize what doesn't.
Yes.
And unfortunately, most of us are spending like time and money on things that don't actually bring us joy, and we don't even realize it.
Yeah. So as a man that has spent some time in mindfulness and meditation and all of those things, I've started to get a bit of a grasp on those types of ideas. When it comes to money mindfulness, it kind of feels a little bit strange. So perhaps you can distill it for us and kind of give us sort of a practical way in which one could teach themselves about money mindfulness and its benefits, but also how you could potentially talk to children about it.
Yeah. So at its basic level, when I start talking to people about this, it's one of those things you need to warm them up a bit on, because it sounds so simple. Just like mindfulness itself, like, oh, you're just being quiet and not thinking. Like, it sounds so simple. And so you need to sort of take people on a bit of a journey to get them there. But that simple question, so a good example, I remember being in an interview, and the host told me that his awesome stuff was a new soundboard he wanted to buy. And he was a podcaster, huge on impact, did a daily show. So the soundboard really was something he really wanted. And that was what his awesome stuff was. But I could tell in talking to him, it wasn't what really made him excited or passionate. And when I started talking about his kids, he started telling me about this trip he'd just done with his daughters. And his entire body language changed, and he lit up, and he just got super excited. And the reason I love this story was because in the midst of telling me about this trip, I could see this pause and almost this light bulb of his realization of, oh, this is actually my awesome stuff, not that soundboard. And like, it almost gave me chills just watching that change, because it was that realization. And as you go further along, like, a lot of us, if we start thinking about tragedy, like, unfortunately, that's when we usually start realizing what's important. There's, a death in the family, or someone's sick, or there's a fire and we've lost everything. And you start realizing what really is important. That's the awesome stuff. It's always what's been important. You just forgot about it. You didn't realize it. And the beauty of this mindfulness is, when you're thinking about something to buy, it doesn't become budgeting and sacrifice, and I can't have these things. It's those things, next to, helping a loved one, or, sending your kids to school, or, helping a stranger. Like, those things, in comparison to the thing you just thought you wanted to buy a moment ago, they're so much bigger and so much more important. Those things become irrelevant. It's not that you can't have them or it's sacrifice. It's that they're no longer important, because you've realized the things that are really important.
That's super interesting, because I would speak for myself that even in my 20s, maybe I had some idea of my values, but it wasn't necessarily acutely obvious to me, or that I could potentially articulate them very clearly. But, as I've had more time to spend with clients and obviously think about things myself, I realized how beautifully linked money and values are. And so the idea that you could potentially, when you think about choices around what is your awesome stuff and, where I'm going to spend my money, actually gives you a very good indication of what your values would be. So maybe talk around that in terms of allowing a child to actually understand what they actually, at a very young age, value, which is in a way, it makes sense, but like, how many kids know what their values are?
Well, and that's the thing is most don't, and most adults don't. But by constantly asking yourself these questions of like, is this my awesome stuff? You start to realize the things that just make you a little bit happier, the things that really excite you. So at a simple level with kids, and I talk about this in the book, is, first off, the young boy in the book's like, everything's my awesome stuff, because that's the answer we're going to get from most of us. And then the monk, the wise mentor, talking to him says, okay, well, think about everything in your room. Just think of all the toys in your room. And he's thinking of all the stuff that he has. And he asks him, like, what is your favorite thing? What's the one thing you love the most? And that kid knows what it is. And most kids know what that is. And most parents know what that is for their kids. They know the one thing that if you're on a trip and you forget it at a hotel or they lost it, it's going to be a problem. They're not going to bed until they find that thing or get that thing. We know what it is. And then we just keep throwing stuff at each other and our kids and distracting from what we already know is really important to them. And then as the kids get a little older, then they start realizing, experiences, travel, playing with their friends, like those things start becoming more and more important. They can see that. But it's just by asking that question, like, what do you love to do? What made you the happiest this past week? When were you the happiest? What were you doing? Who were you playing with? What were you playing with? Kids know, even 5-year-olds, they actually learn these concepts quicker than adults.
Yeah. So is it an iterative approach where like they're still conditioned even from a young age to think about toys, and you just got to keep asking the question until such time as they start to kind of, okay, actually, I've got to think about this a little bit more. Or is it just kind of intuitive to them?
It's an iterative process. They don't usually realize it at first. But if you start posing to them, like if any child, well, what's your favorite thing? They'll tell you what their favorite thing is. And then tell them, okay, that becomes your benchmark for the awesome stuff. So everything else is in comparison to that until you find something you love even more.
So David, why is this important? Why do we care? Like, why is this... why do this with kids? Why is this, in your mind, pivotal? What does it change later on in life?
So as you mentioned in the opening, like it's so important to me to sort of break this cycle of endlessly chasing more. And I believe this is the only way to do that. Because if you don't understand what's really important, then you'll keep seeing stuff around you and think that that's what you want. People have told me I want the bigger house. People have told me I want the more expensive vacation. People have told me all these things, and I've seen it over and over again. And with social media, it's even more prevalent than when I was younger, when you were younger. It's getting worse for every subsequent generation. So this is really important. So I think of like my boys, I don't talk too much about the finance stuff with them because I'm their dad, and they would just lose it. They would ignore me. they would roll their eyes. They don't want to hear it from me.
Yeah.
But this concept of the awesome stuff, because of that, these 12 and 15-year-old boys around their friends with so many things, they don't have jealousy. They don't have envy. They're not trying to have all these things. They know that more is not going to make them happier. And they know what's important to them. And that alone is going to change the trajectory of their life and their relationship with money forever. And that's why it's so important, because otherwise that chase.
A little anecdote from me. I mean, I have had not just existing clients, but I think about, a few, let's call them sort of stereotyped prospect clients that have come through my office, where one of the biggest issues that I was trying to help with was actually explaining to them that they've got more than enough money to be able to actually live their lives, and explaining that the reason they're feeling unhealthy and overworked is because they are just trying to accumulate for the sake of accumulation itself. And so there's a real, I suppose, in a way, they haven't necessarily been reflecting on what is the awesome stuff, and do I have enough to be able to basically do that. And I think those are the outcomes of having a lack of that sort of that insight, maybe from a young age.
For sure. And that's the thing. And a lot of us think that, well, that's because they don't have enough. Like if I had more, I wouldn't make those decisions.
Yeah.
But it's that lifestyle inflation, just like I'm sure you see with your clients. Most of us spend right up to what we can afford. And so we never have that freedom. We never have that buffer. And if we had more, we would spend more. We'd be in a bigger house. We'd buy more expensive toys. We'd do more expensive vacations. I mean, I'm guilty of it as well.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is we just spend more when we have more. And it doesn't, and the thing that most of us don't realize is it doesn't matter how much we have, we keep doing it. You know, you throw $1 million to someone and they'll spend it, and then they'll need another million. Like there is no end. And if you don't believe me, then you just look at like our billionaires and watch them chasing. And some aren't chasing, but so many still are chasing. They've got $1 billion. Why are they chasing?
Yeah.
It's because if they never figure this out, it doesn't matter how much you have.
It seems like there's no balance in that world. It feels like you're either, very philanthropic or completely the other way. It's an interesting take, but it is interesting as well to just look at those with extreme forms of wealth and see what they're actually doing as a kind of test case to us all about what is actually important and what is not. And often is the case. There's an insight from them that, like, once they've got more than enough lifetimes of money, they're changing their behaviors quite significantly. And in a way, turning from the conversations I've had, turning towards a lot of the themes in your book. This is something that is very clearly true, and has felt innately true for me, and probably a large part of it is the single reason that this podcast even exists. I've already really appreciate the fact that there's such a resonance here. I'm sorry, David, this is highly unusual. I don't usually do this, but there is someone at the door, so I'm just going to go and check on that, and I'll be back in a second.
Sounds good.
Can you hear me, David?
I can hear you, yes.
Like I said, this is highly unusual. This doesn't happen very often, but looks like my brother James came in, and lo and behold, what we have here is Julian, my nephew, who's 7 years old. Mm-hmm. Julian, this is David.
Hi.
Hi, Julian. So nice that you could join us.
So maybe I'll do a quick intro to Julian. What do you think?
Sure.
Okay. So Julian's 7 years old. He's obviously my nephew. He's in grade 1. You love basketball, right? That's one of your favorite things to do?
Yeah.
So you have siblings?
Yeah.
Jacob and? Sophia? Okay. And when I asked you whether you'd like to do the podcast, what did you say?
Yes.
Yes? Why?
Because it's fun.
It's fun? Okay. Did you actually read that book?
I read the whole thing.
You read the whole thing?
Yeah.
Oh, you know who wrote that book?
One of your clients?
David did.
Oh.
Pretty cool. Yeah. Well, look, I'm going to be a fly on the wall. I'm going to let you guys have a chat to each other. What do you reckon?
Oh, I love that. Sure. I can't believe you read the whole book. Did you like it, Julian?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Good.
What was one of your favorite characters in the book?
The young boy.
Oh, okay. I love that. I wrote the book loosely after my own boys. So cool. That young boy's like loosely resembles my older son, who's now 15.
I think it was like about a boy wasting money, and then he learns about saving his money.
Yeah, he goes on a bit of an adventure.
Yeah.
And meet some different people. Was there a favorite person that he met on his adventure that you liked the most?
It was like a master, I think. Professor
Professor Wigglebottom?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
your brother Jacob actually said, there's a guy with the name Wigglebum in the book, and he found it very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very good. Do you have any questions about some of the lessons, or are there parts that you liked the most?
Where where he spends all his money on those cookies.
Yeah. Could you relate to that? Have you wanted cookies before?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that. I was trying to think of like I like cookies as well, so I could see definitely wanting to buy more and more cookies. And do you remember what lesson worked for not spending it all on cookies?
No, I forgot.
It's okay.
So if you're not spending on cookies, what are you doing? What can you do with the money?
Save it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You got any other questions for David?
No.
No, you don't.
That's all I can think of.
That's okay. Could you see yourself going on an adventure like that? Would your parents let you go on a big adventure like that, you think?
Probably not.
No. Would you want to if they did?
Yes.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a fun adventure that I'd want to go on when I was a little boy. And that sounded like just a really neat adventure full of all sorts of, places and creatures and things.
And then Julian, like, when the book talks about the awesome stuff, when you think about like the things that you like in terms of maybe even your birthday was not long ago.
Yeah.
When you think about the things that you have, what do you love the most? What is the thing that you don't forget and you really enjoy? Like,
probably basketball the most.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You like what about basketball? What things do you like?
When players dunk and
Okay.
stuff and shoot.
So you like watching basketball
Yeah, and playing it.
and playing it.
Mm.
So that to you, anything relating to basketball is really makes you happy?
Yeah.
So that's what's really neat with the awesome stuff is when you your uncle was asking me about how this even works or why is it important. And it's one of those things where a lot of us adults sometimes we forget the things we love. We stop playing the sports that we love, like basketball. And so we end up working so we can buy things. And we sort of lose those hobbies or those passions or those things we love. And if you can hold on to that, then when you're choosing to do things, you can, ask yourself, like, is this my awesome stuff? Is it something I love as much as I love basketball? Yeah. And if it isn't, I mean, you don't like, it's not your thing. It's not your awesome stuff. And that's really what this is all about, is figuring out more of what every one of us individually loves the most. And so we can do those things. We lose it. I'm sure you've even had times where you want to play basketball with your dad and he's busy. He's got to work. And it's tricky for us adults. We need the kids to remind us about what our awesome stuff really is.
Yeah.
Is there anything, Julian, that you have that is not the awesome stuff that you've bought, but you're like, I don't really care about that too much? Is there anything that you don't like that you've bought and then you've gone, oh, you just left it? You were like,
yes.
What? Like what?
Soccer balls.
Oh, yeah? So that's not awesome to you?
Yeah.
You hate soccer?
Yes.
Oh, really? Fair enough.
One of my favorite ones when I was asking a bunch of kids that question, do you have in Australia Slurpees or slush puppies?
Yeah, like at the 7-Eleven, they got the Slurpee, the icy kind of thing.
Yeah.
So one of the kids wanted a Slurpee and got the large Slurpee.
Yeah.
And forgot about it and put it under his bed. The whole thing melted. He didn't even want it. He didn't even take one sip out of this thing. And it was under his bed. Yeah. And he was like, that was something that he realized wasn't his awesome stuff and that he didn't even want. But yeah. And that was one of my favorite stories.
Julian, you never ask for something and then just leave it, do you?
Not treats, no.
Not treats. You're always on with treats.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything sweet is good for you, yeah?
Like chocolate, lollies, yeah.
Okay. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
What about recently you wanted to have a bike, and you also wanted this for your birthday, and then you wanted this particular type of helmet as well. And how did you talk to your dad about that, and what did he say?
No, because it was way too much money.
And then what did he say you could do?
He said if I did chores, I could get like $2 each day until my birthday.
Okay.
So yeah.
Do you have the helmet now?
No, because all I had was $16.
So you're still saving?
Even though the helmet was like $230.
So you've still got a way to go?
Yeah.
Do you know what you could buy instead of the helmet with $230?
No, because all the stuff there was really expensive.
Yeah. Because I bet you, $230, I bet you if you started seeing all the things you could have for $230, there's probably things you'd like more than the helmet, even if you had the money.
Yeah, maybe.
No, it's neat to just ask yourself that, like, is this my awesome stuff? And you'll start to see it. You'll realize it's not soccer balls, and maybe it's some treats. My younger boy, he loves Slurpees. He actually bugs me all the time to get him Slurpees. But he also, for him, experiences. Like, he loves just doing stuff with his friends. We visited Australia last summer, and he just wanted to spend time on the beach building sandcastles like that. Oh, yeah. That for him, he could do that all day long and just love that. Yeah.
Is there what about, how we talked about previously, of your money that you save, maybe giving some away? Did you read anything in the book about giving money away and what that does? Do you have any ideas?
No, I don't think so.
What did you read in the book? Was there something about potentially feeling happy as a result of helping others?
I don't think so, no.
You don't think so? That was a major... You said you read the book. That was in the chapter.
I think I forgot.
That's okay. It's impressive that you read it.
Yeah. So maybe David, tell us a little bit about that. Yeah.
There's a lesson that talks about giving, but the idea being that the more you like giving, and you'll have more, and the more you give, how it comes back to you in different ways. And some of giving can be money, but it can also just be helping people out. So have you noticed, have you helped someone and then noticed that they returned the favor, or even something better happened in return for you?
Even with friends, like, have you ever done something nice for some friends? And
yes.
Yeah, could you explain that?
So one of my friends, because I had a couple of chocolates, I gave a chocolate to him and he gave me a lolly back. So yeah.
Oh wow. Was it a good lolly? Was it a good exchange?
It tastes like toilet.
Oh, come on.
It was like some butterfly lollies, something like that. It tastes like toilet.
Okay.
The flavor.
I'm not sure what that tastes like.
And were you worried when you gave him the chocolates that you'd have less? Or did you feel like, no, this is a pretty, like, I know that it'll come back somehow to me?
Yeah, it did come back to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what have we talked about with your siblings, Jacob and Sophia? How sometimes to be a bit of a role model as an older brother, sometimes we actually have to give something to them so that we teach them the culture of giving, right?
And then they might give me stuff as well. So
yeah. So like you were saying, could I please have this? And then one of them was saying, no, no, no. And then we had this conversation about, sometimes in order for someone to see the value of something, you need to do it yourself first.
Yeah.
So that they learn about that. Do you think that's true?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how are you going to do that now going forward? Well, what are you going to do with Jacob and Sophia when you want to teach them how to
share with them?
to be more like Yeah. We'll see what happens when we go to a restaurant, eh?
I'll be going.
Oh, well, not now.
But after this.
Maybe. Jacob and Sophia aren't here though.
And that's a tricky one, Julian. For me, the giving was one of the trickier lessons for me, because I always felt that like if I give something away, then I'll just have less for myself.
Yeah.
And it took me a lot to really embrace it. And a good way to see it is if you even think of like friends or, those people who never share, eventually we don't want to be their friends and we don't even realize it. And it's that whole idea of giving, like the power in giving, it feels in the moment like you have less, but if you're a generous person, it definitely comes back, in all sorts of ways. And you can just see it. You can see it with those people that, are really generous and everyone wants to be around and help. And then the people who are never generous and never share, and we stop wanting to give them anything in return. So it's just these small little things where you don't necessarily notice it right away. But if I learned that lesson when I was your age, Julian, it would have been a completely different world for me.
So, Julian, in terms of lessons that you've learnt, what ones would you tell us about? Like what's the lessons of the book that you've read and what we've just discussed today?
It's one of the golden
rules.
This is one of the golden rules. When you think you have everything you need and you have like a house and you still have leftovers, maybe give some to charity.
Okay.
And that's the fourth golden rule. So,
okay.
Yeah.
What other golden rules are there?
There's a golden rule where you keep your money in your bank account and then other people use it, and whoever uses it, they pay you a little more because you gave it to them and they can buy stuff. So yeah.
So when you give it by like investing into something, you get more money from that. So they're giving you more money because you're giving it to them to invest.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. And we did talk about saving as well, didn't we? So
yeah, saving. Yeah.
So not necessarily buying more things, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, like talk about like, do we just buy everything, or what are the things that we want to buy?
The stuff you really need and love.
And love. Yeah. And when do you know that you love it? Like, how do you know that you love it? Do you just know, or like, what's the question you ask yourself?
That's a hard one.
Yeah.
I don't actually know.
So why did you say basketball?
Because people might play sports and they might need it because they see friends that have it and they're like, oh, I think I needed one, and then they go to the store and buy.
But you love basketball, yeah, and that was your awesome stuff. That was something that was really important to you, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you know when you don't like something?
I think when we don't do the sport or something.
Or maybe when you forget about it?
Maybe.
Yeah.
You love it and then you forget about it, so you don't buy it. So, yeah.
That's great.
So it's really important to not forget how much you love it. Yeah.
I think that's a really good way to kind of end it, Julian. I didn't realize you were coming down and going to shock us like this. What's on for the rest of the day, mate?
We're going to go to a restaurant.
Who did that?
You.
Did I?
Get dessert.
I'll have to rerun this and see what I said. He has a good memory. Well, thank you, Julian, for being on, and maybe want to say thank you to David for writing the book.
Thank you, David. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Thanks so much, Julian. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and thanks so much for reading it. And good luck. Hopefully, you get to go to that restaurant, maybe play some basketball today.
All right. So that was highly unorthodox. That was Julian. But, in a sense, David, like, how cool is it? I mean, yes, you're not sure what answers you're going to get, but there's pure gold to be had. I don't think at his age, I would have had any awareness of any of this. And the book itself has a really transformative way of capturing kids' attention through the kind of almost what would you call it? It's almost like an escapist kind of book. It's like an adventure. It's very cool. I quite enjoyed reading it myself.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, because I mean, to really sit and realize, I mean, this is a young boy in grade one that he would read the book to begin with, or any book, is a feat in itself, and especially a book on finance and money and financial literacy. And it's so neat to hear the things they pick up. Like, that's the thing, is when we think about financial literacy, we're trying to teach them about the stock market, but you could hear like all those little things, like they filter in, and it doesn't have to be earth shattering. So even like that fourth lesson, give and you'll have more, like he didn't remember it in those terms, and he didn't remember that lesson. And yet when you asked him, he was like, oh, well, no, there's like this lesson that if you have it, you give it. And
yeah, it almost came out in a different story. He just couldn't be prompted on it. It was quite interesting. And even the way he described investing, which was not quite perfect, but he's starting to formulate the idea that if he gives money away, he can get some money from it because someone else is doing something in the background to make more on it, which is kind of, in essence, very true. This is what we do. We give money away. The individuals that are responsible for making more money go and do what they do with it, and we end up with income, interest, growth, capital growth. And so he's starting to like get that idea as well. And this is a 7-year-old, right? So imagine, we talk about going to 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds, and I mean, you'd have to argue. I mean, I've without sound, this is not a criticism of anyone, but you'd sometimes have to argue with adults. We don't all understand these very basic concepts. So when I'm reading these things, I'm actually, as a financial advisor, reminded of things that I already know, but it's still a reminder. It's not like it's implementable. It's absolutely perfect in my life either.
Yeah, no, it's, and I tried to write it in a way that if an adult does read it, the lessons, like the things I talk about, there's only 4 golden rules, but those 4 golden rules, if you understand those 4 golden rules, or even are just aware of them and follow them, that's like more important than anything else. The rest doesn't, in terms of like, at the end of the day, your relationship to money, or even how much you have, or the wealth you're creating, it doesn't matter. It's those few things. And I'm sure, like, when you talk to your clients, they're like, tell me about the next, what's the next fad? What's the next thing? What should I be doing? How do I move things around? It's the habit of saving and doing that for a long period of time. That's it. And you do that, and your money will become your retirement. It's as simple as that.
So, just in terms of practicality, like what we've done here is kind of give a kind of example of the way in which, a parent could read the book and talk about the concepts of that book with the child in real time. Could you tell us in practical terms, how can parents, teachers really get engaged to help kids understand financial literacy concepts and the interaction between money and life satisfaction and happiness?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing is just talking about it. Like, that is such an important step, and we don't. So like you said, with Julian, you can see already he's aware of some of these concepts. They're floating out there. It doesn't have to be fully solidified, just like any lessons we teach our young kids. but the seeds are planted. And that's what's so important. We make it something that we think is really complicated, but it doesn't have to be. So like as just a starting point, I tell parents, just start talking about money with your kids, and not in the way we just did with Julian, because you could see him squirming. I mean, poor little guy, he's 7, he's, pressure's on, his uncle's grilling him.
Yeah.
It can be as simple as like when you go to the restaurant, just letting him know how much that dinner cost. That's it. Or you go to, a McDonald's and how much that costs, or fill your car up with gas. And they start understanding, because you could see too, he knew that $230 was a lot for that helmet, but didn't really know how much, because he doesn't know what it would take to earn that. No. He doesn't know what else he could buy instead of that. He doesn't know how that relates. And unfortunately, our teenagers don't learn these things because we never talk about money. And to learn the value of money, just start talking to them. And once if they knew, oh, okay, well, it costs, $20 for this and $40 for that and $100 for this. Now they're starting to form, like, they can start to understand, like, that helmet's really expensive because I could get one for $20. Yeah. And it can just be that easy. It doesn't have to be a big lesson. This is how much things cost, and just start asking them. And then same with that awesome stuff. If they understand that concept of like what brings them the most joy, if they want something, just ask them, is it your awesome stuff? And you'll watch, even those 7-year-olds, they'll pause and think about it. And they might try to trick you because they're kids, but they can't trick themselves. And even as adults, you can see that. Like they know immediately. As soon as they pause and think about it, they know if it's their awesome stuff.
That's so cool. So how do you see financial education evolving in the future? Is this what we're doing here through books and this sort of medium a way that we can cut through earlier? How do you see schools integrating this sort of stuff? Like, how is the financial literacy issues going to change?
Well, I'm hoping that we look at it differently, because I know we're slowly starting to see different schools and states and, areas mandating financial literacy in schools, but they immediately are going to, math and budgeting and understanding all these things that, as we just talked about, all these things we just talked about today aren't any of those things. And they don't need to be those things. I mean, you can go through your entire life not understanding those concepts and still have the habit of saving, work with a financial advisor like yourself, have compound growth happening, help people in your community, only buy the awesome stuff, and none of that other stuff really matters. So I'm trying to just show people there's a different way to think about it. And at the same time, remove that taboo, really get rid of a lot of the shame and judgment, because there's so much of that. And just, give people more autonomy and control over their decisions, but by expanding what those decisions are. People don't really realize the decisions they're making. If they knew, even as adults, that car purchase, and I'm not saying don't buy the car, but if they knew what it could buy instead, and not just a different car or a different house, but in terms of financial freedom, maybe, they could retire 5 years earlier if they invest that money instead. Or maybe if they didn't purchase that car, they could generate, an income of $5,000 a year just off dividends. Like these types of things, the more people are aware of the choices they're making, they may make different choices. And unfortunately, right now, we think the choice is, what do you want to buy, this or that? And we choose which one we want to buy. And there's many more possible. It's missing a piece.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll say this again, that when we set out to do the podcast, we, with time started to develop a little bit of an idea of what are the areas that we think need to be focused on, those areas that kind of interact with money in some ways that could be focused on to bring about a meaningful life. And when I think back to that work that we did, and then I've read this particular book, I just see these like very clear links between what you're writing about. And so whilst this episode is framed as in the context of kids and financial literacy, but it is really, honestly, reading that book for me was super helpful to remind me of what the meaning of money is, and the interaction between life satisfaction and money. It really distills that very nicely. So if we could think about what the key takeaways are that you hope both adults and the kids will actually get from this, what are they?
One, for sure, ask yourself, is this my awesome stuff?
Yep.
So I think even you mentioned Julian just had a birthday party.
Yep.
And the inclination, because we live in a society built around consumerism, is to buy him all the things you can and buy him these expensive things,
Sure.
buy him that helmet, buy him the bike. But he just told us his awesome stuff is basketball. And I'm sure if he knew you could gather all his friends and get them out to a court and they could play basketball all afternoon and have, drinks and food for them so they could just keep playing, that would be his awesome stuff, not all the things we're inclined to buy. So number one, ask, is that my awesome stuff? Next is, have these conversations with your kids. Just start talking to them, but in a way that there's no shame and judgment, because that's a thing with the awesome stuff. And especially as parents, they'll say something and we're like, ooh, like we want to jump in there and tell them why they're wrong or why there's something better. But if we can hold back and let them just figure that out for themselves and remove that judgment, because it's going to be different for everyone. And then instead of telling them what they should have as their awesome stuff, tell them what your awesome stuff is. So
I was going to say, David, is there a step before the kids where in actual fact for the kids to actually want to listen or to actually model themselves, that one actually has to instill these actions in their own lives to be able to indicate that daddy or mummy or uncle is actually thinking about those things themselves and isn't just a hoarder of goods that they don't care about and forget about as soon as they've purchased.
Yeah, for sure. That's a step. I will caution parents though.
Yep.
Kids are smart and they're always looking for loopholes. And if you tell them something's your awesome stuff, they're going to hold you accountable. So when you go and buy something like, hey, Dad, you told me your awesome stuff was, hanging out with me and not going fishing or whatever it might be. Like they'll call you out on it. I'll get them. And sometimes too, I'll do, I'm trying to think of some, I love, cocktails. And so I'll have, I've got this, and it was cheap on Amazon, but it's almost like a little, a perfume jar that I'll fill with orange blossom spray. So I could spritz the drinks. And the eye rolls from my boys, I almost did it just for the eye rolls, to be honest. It's priceless because they're like, really, Dad? That's your awesome. That's your awesome stuff. So,
clever boys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to sort of round out the episode, I was wondering what's still to do for you. Any more books on the cards? And where can people, hear about you, hear more, get more access to resources? Are there any resources that we can make available at all to our community?
So the first one is, if you want to grab the book for your kids, it's The Golden Quest, and you can find it on Amazon or your local bookstores and request it. And then if you do get the book, I encourage parents to read it with their kids so that you can have these discussions. Oh, we're at the part about the awesome stuff. Let's have a discussion about it together. That's really great. I'm also doing more and more public speaking going into middle schools because I just love talking about this stuff and I find it so important. So if anyone wants me to come into their school and talk, I'm happy to do that. I can do it virtually, but I also travel quite a bit and we'll come right into schools and talk to the teachers, the parents, the kids, and all these concepts. And then as far as myself, I'm working right now on a book for the adults that'll talk about how to start having conversations with their kids.
Oh, that's great.
Just as we talked about, it's pretty much the same concepts, but just how we can start doing that, how there's little, hacks to make it easier for parents. And I'm also working on a really fun card deck that I want to work with kids. And it'll be similar concepts to the book, but it'll inspire, just these, asking these questions, do you prefer to give or save? What's a favorite gift you've ever given? Just prompts to just get them just to start thinking about these concepts with no real, not a lesson plan, not a workbook, just creativity and imagination, which kids love anyway.
That's amazing. It's so great. I really thank you for coming on. This is a bit of a and being open to the dynamic nature of this particular episode. Like it's been a real joy and real fun. And I think the message is very clear. And like you said, the book is available and it's an absolute teaching opportunity. So I encourage our listeners to get a copy and start reading. So just as a last question that I ask all guests, what's your spirit animal, and why is it your spirit animal?
Oh man, that's a tricky one.
It is.
I've got a lot of fire signs. So if I think of like a lion, a lion comes up quite a bit for me, or or the what's the one, the bird that the rebirth, the bird, the phoenix.
The phoenix.
Phoenix as well. Yeah.
That's that. I've never had the phoenix. It's a mythical creature. It does suit you though, like given the book. It's a little bit of mythical stuff going on in that book without giving it away.
For sure. Some mythical stuff, a little bit of a rebirth, still a lot of fire. So, yeah.
Good on you, David. Really appreciate your time. I know it's late there.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Joe. I'm so happy we were able to make it work, and I love that you enjoyed the book as well.
Good on you. If you have resonated in any way with the sentiments of this podcast, we would be delighted to direct you to our website, www.itsneveraboutmoney.com.au, for more free resources and education aimed at improving your capacity to make sound financial decisions for the benefit of your family. We wish you every success, however you define it.